Alright, Shalom. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to begin this lesson by giving all glory, all honor, and all praises unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rucha Kodash, giving double honors, double unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who surely do rule well. As always, I like to say Shalom unto the elect. Alright, there's a brother, Mashallah, from the hills of Yahushai camp, coming back to you again with another lesson, and Lord's willing, this lesson is edifying. Right, topic, the great rebuke of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Right, you want to begin here in the book of Proverbs, chapter 9, reading from verse 8. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Right, the reason we're pulling this precept here, because we want to get the understanding or meaning behind the word rebuke. Right, this is the Hebrew word yakach. Right, which means what? To prove, decide, judge, rebuke, reprove, correct, be right, to decide, judge, to adjudge, appoint, to show to be right, to prove, to convince or convict, right, to reprove, chide, to correct, right, or to be chastened. Also reading the Strong's definition, a primitive root to be right, i.e. correct, reciprocal, to argue, causatively, to decide, justify, or convict. Appoint, argue, chasten, convince, correct, or correction, daysman, dispute, judge, maintain, plead, reason, rebuke, reprove, surely in any wise. Right? So there is a great rebuke that is set to be handed out by the hands of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to the people that dwell on the earth today. And we're going to start here in the book of Isaiah 66. And we're going to read from verse 14. And when you see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like an herb. And the hand of Yahweh shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. For behold, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will Yahweh plead, which again he went into that word rebuke. It also goes back to plead with all flesh, which when you go into this word plead, it means to judge. Get that real quick. It goes into the Hebrew word shapat. Let's see. Well, plead, right? Goes into the Hebrew word here, shapat. Hebrews 8,199. To judge, govern, vindicate, punish. Right? So, for by fire and by his sword will Yahweh plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahweh shall be many. Right? So the first aspect of this we want to get into is by whose hands is Yahweh going to rebuke the people of the earth? Well, it's by the hand of his son, right? Because we know Yahushai is the hand or the right hand of the Father. Isaiah 59, my arm had brought salvation unto me, for my righteousness it had sustained me. That is the book of Acts, chapter 17 and verse 30. Anything that the Lord wants done in the earth, he's going to do it by the hand of Yahushai. Right, Acts 17 verse 30. And in fact, Salakia, we could first go to this precept, right? This is the book of 2 verse 13, and reading verse 37, right? And this my son, who's his son, Yahushai, right, shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, for their wicked life are fallen, which for their wicked life are fallen into the tempest. Going into that word inventions, we understand it's not just things they invent, like literal things that have been invented, but what also their plans. Again, Micah chapter 2, read from verse 1. There are wicked people in the earth today who plan wicked things. Right? And the Most High plans to rebuke them, and he's going to do it by whom? By the hand of his son, which is his right hand. Acts 17, and we're going to go to verse 30. And the times of this ignorance power winked at, but now commanded all men everywhere to repent, because he had appointed a day in the which he will judge, rebuke the world in righteousness. He's going to correct the world by that man whom he had ordained, whereof he had given assurance unto all men, in that he had raised him from the dead. I'm going to read this in the NIV. Right, Acts 17 verse 31 in the NIV. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice. Think of this Revelation chapter 19, which says what? It says I'm not butcher. Sorry, it is the word and escaping my mind right now. Salakia. It's book of Revelation 19. And verse 11, and I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him, this same man which we just read about, Acts 17 verse 31, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness doth he judge and make war. So he's going to righteously rebuke the world, the nations, and them that dwell therein. Right? Acts 17 verse 31 again. For he has set a day when he will judge the world, right, in righteousness by that man, with justice, right, again, righteously according to the law, by the man he has appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. So who is the man he's going to use to rebuke the world? It's his son, Yahushua, Jude chapter 1, reading from verse 14. And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these things. Of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints. Again, Yahushua, Isaiah 26:21. Right? Behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the world. Right? The inhabitants of the earth, Salakia. Right? To execute judgment, rebuke, render his rebuke upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all the ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed. Again, those same wicked inventions, 2 Ezra chapter 13 verse 37, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Right? So we understand who the Lord is going to use to rebuke, to dish out this great rebuke with or from, by whose hands, right? But how is he going to do it? By what means? Well, the Lord is going to render his rebuke again, as the Isaiah 66 says, with fire. Right? In Nahum 1, and we could read from verse 2. Power is jealous, and Yahweh revengeth. Yahweh revengeth, and is furious. Yahweh will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. Again, Isaiah 66. Yahweh is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. Yahweh hath his way in the whirlwind, and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. Right? The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. Again, these same enemies, the wicked inventions of those nations, right? So again, we understand the enemies of Yahweh. Psalms 2, Psalms 83, Nehemiah 5 and 9, the heathen nations. Nahum 1 verse 3, Yahweh is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. Yahweh hath his way in the whirlwind, and in the storm the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebuked the sea and maketh it dry. He dried up all the rivers. Bashan languisheth, and Carmel and the flowers of Lebanon languisheth. The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the earth is burnt at his presence. Yea, the world and all that dwell therein. Who can stand before his indignation, and who can abide in his face in the fierceness of his anger. His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are thrown down by him. Nahum 1 and verse 6, his fury is poured out like fire. That is how the Lord is going to render his rebuke. He is going to send fire on the earth and make these nations pay for all the wickedness that they have done again. Convince all the ungodly men convince all the ungodly of all the ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed. And again, even when you go back to the meaning of that word rebuke again, you crack in the Hebrew, it goes back to what? It also goes back to convincing or convicting, right? Book of Revelation chapter 14 and verse 9, again you're going to see it twofold. He's going to rebuke them by the hand of his son, but also by means of fire. So right, to the who and what, right, or the how, the who and the how he's going to rebuke them, right? And what we see these two things playing off simultaneously at the same time, because the same fire that he's going to use, the missiles, right, nuclear missiles, the same nuclear missiles he's going to use to rebuke these nations, his son is going to be in the presence of those witnessing it simultaneously, because when he makes his return to pour out his wrath and his anger and his rebuke upon the nations using the Lord's chariots, right, that same Revelation 19, and he saw when heaven opened up, right, a white horse. That white horse is representing the chariot that he's riding on, right? Just like he's going to use that chariot to pour out his own dispensation of fire, Yahweh also is sending the missiles, 2 Ezra 16, and what? Both of those entities, Yahweh's son, right, riding that chariot, and the fleet of chariots that will follow him, right? Again, Revelation 19, so the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses as well. It's more than one chariot. We just read it, Jude 1, verse 14. Enoch also prophesied of these things, saying what? Yahweh, or the Lord, right, cometh with 10,000s of his saints. And how is Yahweh coming? He's sending his son, right? His son has by all rights, right, the ability and the right to dispense or dish out the anger of Yahweh upon the nations of the earth, right? Revelation 14 and reading verse 9. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his right hand, which again you understand now the why. We read it the 2 Ezra 13 to the 7, right? The why, the wicked inventions. The same Revelation 14, verse 9, as we're going to get later, the Revelation 13, 16. Why is he going to render his rebuke with flames of fire? Because they committed this sin, right? If any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of power of Yahweh, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. And so how is the Lord going to dispense his wrath and his rebuke upon these nations, his judgment upon these nations? How is this great rebuke going to be handed out or dished out? It's going to be dished out by means of fire, right? Revelation 19 and verse 20, the doom of the beast and the false prophet, right? And again, my brother Canon loves to bring it out when you go into that word doom in the online etymology. It goes into what? It goes into meaning judgment, right? And the beast was taken. So reading this is what? Judgment of the beast and the false prophet, which speaks of what? The rulers of the earth today, right? Which are the Edomites, what I want to think of the fact that they rule out of America, they rule out of the beast structure, which is the NATO and the EU, or all the 7 kingdoms in which they had dominion and power over the earth. Thus why the beast was said to have 7 heads, right? This beast is speaking about men, the men that rule the earth currently today. Job 9:24, Malachi 1 and 4, right? The earth is given into the hand of the wicked, he covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Right? And again, now Malachi 1 and 4. And when you read from verse 3 go down, it speaks of what? Esau and Edom being known as the border of wickedness, and the people against whom what? Yahweh had indignation forever. Right? And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worship his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, which was caused or started by the missiles burning with brimstone. So the fire of the Lord, right, which is contained in these missiles, his weapons. Jeremiah 50 verse 25, Isaiah 54 verse 17, right? That was the judgment, and that was how he rendered his rebuke upon these nations, right? Going now, we're going to go again to now Psalms chapter 2, because again, we dealt with the rebuke, the corrective measure, the judgment the Lord is going to dish out. We dealt with who is going to dish it out, right? Or by whose hands he's going to dish it out. And we dealt with what he's going to dish out as well as fire, right? But what did this cause? Or how should we operate knowing that this is going to be the case? Well, what we best please the Son, right? This is Psalm chapter 2 and verse 12. Kiss the Son, lest he, in fact, I'll even read from verse 10. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, speaking of us, the nation of Israel. Your princes are altogether kings, right? Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve Yahweh with fear and rejoice with trembling, which is what these heathen nations are not doing, right? Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. I'm going to go into this word here, kiss. It should go into meaning embrace, right? Goes into the Hebrew word nashak. Hebrews 5,401. To put together, kiss, to kiss, to kiss, to touch gently, to handle, be equipped with, to be equipped, right? A primitive root identical with Hebrew 5,400 through the idea of fastening up, right? Compare Hebrew Strong's 2,380 with Hebrew Strong's 2,836. To kiss, literally or figuratively, touch, also as a mode of attachment, right? To equip with weapons, armed men rule, kiss, that touched, right? In fact, I'm going to go and see what it says here. Right. Right, to attach yourself to the Son, embrace him, accept him, or what? Or you are going to be put to death. Revelation 13 and verse 16. And he calls it all, both small and great, which is what this wicked invention, right, the ungodly work that these ungodly sinners have ungodly committed. And he calls it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, the mark of the beast, the RFID microchip, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that had understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Right? So who were the ones who were responsible for pushing this mark in the earth? The people who run the beast system and beast structure that you see in the earth today. The ones that have revived the Roman Empire in the earth today. Right? This is Revelation 6 and verse. We read from verse 15, right? And we close with this precept. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, again, be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, right? Now we understood that kings were speaking to specifically the nation of Israel, but what these kings as well, because if you don't do what it is going to be accepted by the Son of Man, you're going to be put to death. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men and every bound man and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. Why? Because of the rebuke that was dished out, the corrective measure, the judgment that was handed out, the conviction that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai sent upon the face of the earth for all the wicked deeds that they wickedly did. Right, verse 16, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, so the underground bunkers or the caves that they hide in, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, Yahweh, and from the wrath of the Lamb, Yahweh Shai. Why? Because what? When his wrath is kindled but a little, right, he is going to destroy everybody that is upon the face of the earth, that what? That worship the beast, worship his image, or had received his mark. Again, they all were thrown into the lake of fire. Anybody who had a mark on him, by the time Yahweh reaches here, is not going to survive, right? And neither would the ones who were responsible for pushing out the mark, again, the kings. Revelation 6 verse 15, right? And from the Salat reading back verse 16, and said to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because we would have rather died like that than have to face the rebuke that these two men have to push out. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? And the answer is nobody. Unless you have found favor with the Son of Man, unless the Son of Man has accepted you, unless you were predestinated from before the foundation of the world, Ephesians chapter 1, and by extension the rest of the elect, unless you are found within that number of men, you're not safe from the Son of Man, you're not safe from his Father, right? So the great rebuke is going to be dished out by Yahweh through the hands of Yahweh Shai by means of fire upon all the wicked men upon the face of the earth. By reason of what? Or for what purpose? Because they did wickedly. By what? Pushing their wicked invention and their wicked plan to become God in the earth, by forcing the mark of the beast upon every man that dwelt upon the face of the earth. And for what? By trying to force it on the elect. Again, there should no flesh be saved, except those days were shortened. And again, Revelation 3 and 10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon the face of the earth to try them that dwell on the earth. Right, Revelation 12 and 12. And woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. Right? So rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, for he know that he had but a short time. And what is the greatest form of wrath that the devil could show towards you? Is by marking you with the mark of the beast, because they understand the judgment that must be dispensed and dished out for taking that mark. Hence the reason why what? They were found in the mountains and rocks, right? Because what they know is time to hide by the time that prophecy is starting to play out in the earth. Why? Because they understand that Revelation 14:9 judgment. They will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So Lord willing, that lesson was edifying and that you were edified. In closing, I like to say, Kal, Lemla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruach HaKodesh. I like to give double honors, double unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who surely do rule well. And as always, I like to say Shalom unto the elect. This was a brother here, Maya Shala, from the Heralds of Yahushai camp. Till next time, I like to say Shalom. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand.